So today I wanted to record something talking about when resistance returns in life, or when life starts to feel difficult again. Maybe you go through some phases where you suddenly are confused. Why do things feel so heavy? Why are you struggling so much with life? Maybe as this process goes with healing and awakening, maybe you had an awakening, maybe you had some phases where everything just felt right, everything felt natural, and life felt great. You felt like you knew where you were going. And then let's explore what happens in these periods of our life where resistance returns. Why does it happen? And what are some of the questions that you can ask yourself to help you navigate these more challenging times, which is things feel more difficult. So I think first really important place to start is just understanding how important a part of the process this is. It's almost like phase 2 of awakening and healing is it's not what your mind can ever expect. And it's almost like you have to understand the mechanics and the mechanisms of your own struggle and suffering from a very directly experiential level. So you have to go through all these kind of phases of life where you start to struggle again, and then you wake up to the fact that you were going in opposition to something that life wanted you to do. And you learn so much from these phases. It's like your initial insights are very almost naive at first. Like, I can speak from my own experience here, and I've heard Angelo talk about this before, which was very helpful for me, is understanding that the kind of realizations of awakening really deepen through kind of going deeper and deeper into understanding your own suffering, through it coming back, and you have to kind of see it on a whole different level. So what to do about it, right? This is a more important part of the video, I feel. And for me, there's a couple of questions that I would highlight. And one of the first ones could be just asking yourself, what am I fighting against here? Right? There's a part of us that we don't even realize, but it starts to try to go back into opposition with life. And this is what we need to start to become clear on, is what is the difference between the phases where life feels like in flow and synchronicities and all of that, and then the phases where life feels heavy, and realizing that the heavy phases are just as important. So that's the foundation. But start to get clear with yourself. Am I believing that things should be different than they are? Right? There's a part of your mind that really wants to cling onto some of the separate identity that it can force the hand of life, in a sense, right? And we can even acknowledge that and let it play out and see for ourselves how that plays out for us. And that's often how it has to go, I think. I don't think there's another way. Surrender. I saw Matt Garrett post something recently, answering a question to somebody, and it felt very right on the money with this. It's like surrender comes from the mind's exhaustion. You can't really force it. So we have to see how the mind's exhausted attempts to kind of force, to fight against reality, to resist reality, right? Somebody else has commented on one of my videos before, like a Byron Katie quote, is when you fight against reality, you lose 100% of the time. But maybe part of realizing that is letting it play out, but just look at the story. Like, this is the thing, right? The stories sneak back in. We don't even realize this until we do. But are we telling ourselves a story? Because it's also often a letting go of the direction that life is pushing you in, right? Are you getting attached to a story again of the way your life's supposed to go? Are you comparing yourself to other individuals? That is the life I want to live, right? But you don't actually, but your mind might say that because it's afraid of the pain that it might have to feel. As this process deepens, the mind might throw a tantrum. It definitely will, at phases where a part of you acknowledges what you might have to feel, and then it will look for any other way around. And part of that is going back into the old resistance patterns, seeing like almost like we're testing reality, trying to negotiate. Okay, I'll let go to a certain extent, but I still want this, right? And this might sound extreme, but you just check in for yourself. You'll often find that this is true. Are you getting addicted to an old life? And again, there's nothing like, I don't want to incite fear in anybody, because all of these different phases that we go through are perfectly part of the unfolding as well. If that makes sense. So these times where we revert back to our old life and try to cling to that, and certain ways of being have their lessons in it, right? It's not like anything's gone wrong. You can't fuck up this process. But you can create more struggle for yourself by trying to go into opposition with it. So, it's always kind of paradoxical talking about it, because all these aspects of the process need to play out how they do. But at the same time, we can make it more difficult for ourselves by getting caught up in stories of the mind, right? So really be aware of that. What story am I telling myself about? Because if you really just, I've had times where things feel heavy again, but it's a much different way to go through it when you have this kind of unshakable understanding that nothing can go wrong. Nothing is playing out any way other than it should. But then with that unshakable kind of knowing, I can still see how there's been phases where I created extra unnecessary struggle for myself by getting too caught up in story again. Right? And again, it's fine. It's been perfect. It's how it needs to play out. But I guess it's just, that's what we start to learn with the deeper stages, is you start to notice earlier and earlier, this is how I got caught up in suffering again, right? I was believing a story. My mind was saying things shouldn't be playing out like this, right? But you're saying that because the way things are playing out are making you feel something that you need to feel but you don't want to feel, right? So maybe life's forcing you to let go a little bit more. Maybe, it always comes down to letting go, because whatever we're feeling, we're trying to hold distance from it, right? And that's why we'll scramble at narratives of, this is what I want. Like, there's two levels to it. Like, on one level, it's a realization that there's no way that things should be that you can do what you want with your life. But I feel like it's the same realization. There's no way that things should be. There's just the unfolding as it happens. Because here's the thing, right? Angela said this before as well, and it's very accurate. I feel that when things feel like they're going well, then the mind believes it's in control, and it's like, oh yeah, I've made things go well, and that sets us up for feeling the kind of struggle when we feel out of control, if that makes sense. So it's like it's almost like the pull of thought telling stories seems like a good idea when things are going well, and then we start creating all these stories, which is fine, but you have to hold it very lightly, right? Like, when you can hold it very lightly, then it's fine, because then you can see the moment that life upends that story, was there any attachment? That's what you can see. Is like, if there's struggle, there was attachment to that story. When there's no attachment, then cool, you can have stories, but then you can see that. But if it doesn't play out that way, then that's absolutely fine, and I need to acknowledge what that makes me feel. So if you're having like fantasies about the future and where things are going with your life, sure, that's fine, whatever. But if you're struggling again, when that doesn't play out that way, that's because there was attachment to an illusory future, basically. And life will break those attachments, right? Life will show you when there's attachment. So that's why they struggle again. So you want to kind of just, notice that. Like, am I getting attached to a certain outcome? And why am I fighting with the way things are going? Because life's showing me that I'm not really in control in the way that I thought. But if you embrace that, right? If you just say, how can I get more into non-resistance? How can I just not resist, right? What if there was nothing going in opposition to what is happening right now, to the way things are playing out? What if I did not go into opposition with that? And, maybe we do that for a bit and then we get caught back into resistance. But those kind of questions are really powerful because it starts to open us up to a different way of being, where it's like, wow, I hadn't considered the fact that I just actually don't need to resist this moment. Even if your mind is saying, like, this is not how things should be playing out, this is the worst possible thing that could happen to me, it becomes this, like, kind of trust where you're like, I can't see in the moment why the things are playing out the way they are, but you just really start to trust the intelligence of this process, that nothing can go wrong in essence. And you can really just start to drop the need to control everything, because control comes from fear of certain experiences, right? It's like, I need to control my environment, I need to control my life so that I don't feel certain things. But if you're like, I'm willing to embrace any experience that comes my way, you can really start to flow with the heavy stuff, the light stuff, the expansive stuff, the contracted stuff. It's like, it's all good. So hope that's helpful, and all the best as always. What a beautiful morning out here. My last morning at this spot in Bremerhaven, and then I'm going to Bremen for a few nights and then Berlin. So a little update.